Hello, hello, hello. This is Gresh from the I Am CEO podcast, and I have a very special guest on the show today. I have Annie Sloan. Annie, excited to have you on the show.
Thank you. I am thrilled to be here.
Yes, absolutely. The thrill is definitely all ours, and the excitement of all that Annie's doing, we're going to dive into, of course. But before we do that, I want to read a little bit more about Annie so you can hear about some of those awesome things. And Annie is co founder and CEO of the Host Co., the hospitality platform connecting local amenities to short term rentals. From massage and chef to fresh flowers, bike rentals, and beyond. Prior to the Host Co., Annie was a creative director of both Facebook and Twitter. She has led and embedded projects for Google, Airbnb, Samsung, and is a graduate of USC Film School and has produced and directed broadcast television and film internationally. Through her years in film, she spent a cumulative 4 years on projects in Asia, Africa, and Europe, developing both a global POV and a passion for supporting small businesses from tourism through technology. And one of the things I was reading about when I was prepping for this is that she considers herself a lifelong traveler, which I think is pretty awesome to see the world in so many different perspectives. And she also is probably going to talk about and introduce me to a new, I don't want to say word, but maybe phrase, which is shoppable Airbnbs. But I love everything she's doing because we always hear that the riches are in the niches, and her getting the opportunity to drill down into a niche within a niche is really what I'm excited about for this show. So Annie, excited about all you're doing, excited even more to have you on the show. Are you ready to speak to the IMCO community?
I am. I definitely am.
Well, let's get it started then. So to kind of kick everything off, let's rewind the clock a little bit, hear a little bit more on how you got started with a Call Your CEO story.
So, I mean, you reading the bio, that is a mouthful, right? And the first thing I have to say about that is, there are so many things in your career that seem like disparate, really different things, right? I went to film school. I worked in film and television for many years. And then I went deeper into tech. And I was working at, for example, Twitter as a creative director, but I was directing animated videos for them. I was writing videos, right? So it actually became a pretty natural transition to go further into tech from television, right? I just kept getting booked, which is fantastic, getting booked to do interviews with people who might be leading the comms team at Twitter or Facebook, et cetera, or at Facebook making videos that were animated videos for senior citizens in Brazil about how to be less lonely through playing group games, things like that.
Cool.
But you at the time, they all seem like disparate dots. And then when you look back, you're like, oh, it's really connect the dots here that has created the picture that it is today, right? And I think especially for younger people, it doesn't have to be a linear line, right? You're going to take all the different things you've done in your past to make up the picture of exactly what you're going to do. And for me, it was working in film and television and doing a lot of international work. In very weird parts of the world, being very tired and hungry a lot of the time, right? And then really moving deeply into tech. And then while I was in tech, my current co-founder at the Host Co., he and I used to work at HGTV, Home and Garden TV together. And we flipped houses on shows. I mean, you name it, Color Splash, Design to Sell, Landscape Smart, Curb Appeal, Design on a Dime, like you name it, I probably worked on one of those shows, right? So not only working in television, learned how to flip houses and learned a whole lot about real estate. My co-founder at the time, he left HGTV with a designer from a show, and they built a real estate and property management company. And their model was, we're going to find homes in distress in vacation destinations, and we're going to buy them for real cheap. This was also a while ago, so it was probably easier to buy real cheap real estate, right? And then we're going to flip them really fast because we know how to do that, right? And we also know all the contractors because they've all been on the shows, right? We're going to flip them, and then we're going to sell them as ready to go short-term rentals. So, hey, you want to buy this house? It already has the Wi-Fi on. It already has an Airbnb listing. Do you want us to rent it tomorrow? Here are the keys, which is a really smart model because, one, they also have the property management company. So they're still making 25% of the overall rentals as the property management company. The second part of that is, if you buy a place for short-term rental and you've never done it before, you think you're going to rent it the next day. but you need to have property management. You need to have the right furniture. You need to have the right pictures. You need to have the right gated Wi-Fi. And how do you do the Netflix with the guests and everything? They just
Yeah.
took care of all of that, right? So they could sell these houses at a premium, completely furnished, and you're off to the races the next day. You're renting out right away. And they built up this big property management company while they were also building up a real estate company. And they were keeping some houses, they were selling some houses. And at the same time, I was going further and further into tech, moving away from doing more video to doing more product and how you talk
Mhm.
about product, how you get people to understand product and why it's a useful product. Things like the Google privacy policy. I worked on how to communicate that and also how to tell the stories around it, right? So
Mhm.
at this time, you'd think, oh, these guys are doing two really separate things. But I also was a short term rental host and have been for many years. And
Right.
I bought one of the properties from my co founder. And of course, at this time, you're not thinking anything of it. And then he kept saying to me, we have all of these guests at all of these houses, and we get the same questions every day. If you have 30 rentals, you get the same question 30 times a day. It's where do I get a massage?
Mm.
Can I get a late checkout? Hey, it's Friday night and we're 2 bottles of wine in and we're 20 miles from a store and we ran out of firewood. What do we do? Right? You can
Right.
predict all the questions that guests are going to ask. Can I get a mid-stay clean? So he started saying this to me, and I said, yeah, I noticed that guests are asking for the same things every day, and we're unable to provide any of those things. And there's this huge operational inefficiency that we're also getting the same question 30 times a day, right?
Mhm.
So I said, why don't we build a beta of a product that will retail anything we want to retail in this space and take care of all of the communication around this so we could just get this off your plate, right? And we built a beta. I put a team together because I'd been really moving further into tech and put it in 7 houses in the Joshua Tree area of California.
Mhm.
And in the first month, 40% of guests made a purchase.
Wow.
It was crazy. And 93% of guests opened the store, which is a
Mm.
digital store that says right after you book, hey, if you'd like to add any amenities or services, head on over and check out our store. So kind of like an eBay store, but totally on steroids for hospitality, right? Um, and I then very preemptively, I was a creative director at Facebook. I was on a long-term contract, quit my job, which was way too early, but I said, this is something. Like this is really something here. Um, I quit my job to start fundraising and building the actual product. And we did a VC, we did a pre-seed round in 2021,
Mm.
which you may also say, hey, isn't this hospitality? And wasn't that during COVID? Yes, it was.
Mm.
But it actually ended up being a really good time to build before we released in 2022.
Right. That makes so much sense. I appreciate you sharing that journey. I got shades of. I'm sure you've heard the Steve Jobs commencement speech where he talks about being able to connect the dots. We can only
Yeah.
do them looking backwards, and I got chills of that. And as you were speaking about the dots, and of course, like how those things kind of come aligned.
Yeah. And you can't, I mean, you can certainly have goals into the future, but I feel like really understanding different things is what's going to make a really good CEO, a really good leader in the future, and not just, I mean, there's fantastic people that know I'm going to business school, I want to do this, and they just have the straight line, but those ideas come from all over, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you've ever heard of there's a book called Range that I always swear by, because it talks exactly of that. Because the way the world is changing, things are not becoming further and further apart. They're actually starting to intersect. They're starting to overlap, and you see
Yeah,
this in one, especially tech. Tech is literally in every industry if you really think about it,
yeah,
and that talks about the problems of tomorrow are going to be solved by people who have a range of experience and range of thoughts. And it speaks directly to your experience and your co-founder, and being able to kind of understand that and realize that we can create new solutions because we're looking at it from all these different vantage points. Not to mention as well, you traveling, I imagine also probably gives you a lot, more different perspectives than the average person.
yeah. I think the perspectives, I think also what I like to say is this is like don't rely on anyone who's never waited tables, which is like
Yeah.
sure, not everyone's waited tables, but you have to be willing to do the dishes. right? As well as be on a podcast, right? And you have to have that range as well. Um, or you're never going to be able to reach really deep when you need it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would say even be able to kind of have that perspective to kind of see that, okay, 40% are of people or this amount of people are asking for this.
Yeah.
That's when you start to see those opportunities that are literally standing probably in front of everybody's face. And
Yeah.
you're just like not thinking about like, I'm tired of people asking me, where can I get firewood? But those are questions where there are opportunities that lie from them.
Yeah.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So I wanted to drill down a little bit more. I know we touched on a little bit. Can you take us through a little bit more on how the host co works,
Yeah.
how you're helping out, the people that are visiting Airbnbs, but also the hosts as well too.
Yeah. So how it works is if let's say you're a guest and you go to book a weekend cabin, and it can be on Airbnb, it can be on Verbo, it can be on Priceline, Booking, Direct Booking, etc. Right when you book, you're going to get a message from your host, and that's the first time the host can actually communicate with you. And generally on any of these platforms, hey, thanks for booking, confirmation. Thanks for booking. We're so excited to have you. Now, what that host can add to that message, which is generally an automated message, is if you'd like any services while you're here, like massage, chef, late checkout, it's very variable about where you are. If it's a city, it might be a parking spot, luggage storage, any of those things. Check out our store. And that
Mm,
store, it's very mobile focused. There's nothing to download. It's a link. And that store has all the things that likely the host has already identified that you're going to ask them about.
right.
Um, and starting with generally things like late checkout, pet fee, guest fee. We have a lot of people that add extra recycling pickup. They have like a bachelor party destination because
Mhm.
you're like, get it out of here, right? Mid-state
Right.
we have people who do a lot of on-site sales of things like phone chargers, snack baskets, and then we have people who only do wellness services, right, in that
Mhm.
area. What we like to say is each store should have like 10 to 15 items because it's not the brochure rack at the Best Western where you're like, oh, there's 90 things here I never want to do. What we
Right.
like to say is people don't go to Napa to go bungee jumping, Napa, California.
Mhm.
They go for like a romantic weekend, right? So
Mhm.
are you going to give them fresh flowers? Are you going to add extra things to that? And what we do is we connect local vendors in the area that we've identified. We do very few of those because it's very curated for us. We use a lot of the same contractors that Hilton and Marriott use for chefs and massages, but then we enable the host to add their own services.
Mhm.
So an example of a really interesting service is we had a property manager in Coachella Valley add for the week of Coachella a mobile tattoo artist who will come to the house, like a big party house, 20
Yeah.
rooms, 30 rooms or whatever, and do flash tats.
Mm.
And that is not only just a really interesting service, it gives that property manager a real differentiator from the other literally 1900 listings in that area, right, in Joshua Tree, Coachella Valley. And it also gives them something to communicate way ahead of people saying. So if you have an email list of guests, previous guests, everybody's opening that email. Everybody's like, what? Right? 4 months ahead of Coachella, they're going to consider much more consideration for your place than another one. And it's a way to communicate that without offering a discount. So
Mm.
you're not sending an email that says 20% off if you book early for Coachella. You're giving a real differentiator and you're providing a much more interesting hospitality experience for people, and more offer. Everybody's like, where do I get a massage? Can we please get it cleaned every day? That's why you choose a hotel, right? It's
Right.
because it's got a lot more amenities than a short-term rental.
Yes, I absolutely love that. It's so funny. I booked an Airbnb about a week or two ago for my wife, and that was the exact questions I had. Okay, where can I do a massage? We were trying to stay remote, just all those things. And
Yeah.
it's so funny. I was listening to an interview that you did. I think you said Gatorade and yoga mats end up
Yeah.
being like some of the things that people ask for a lot. But it really goes back to that word that I think I even heard you say in the interview of experience. Like, how can you create that experience? And I think that you start to understand that experience a lot more when you are quote unquote waiting those tables and you start to realize this is exactly what they're asking for. So why don't I provide an easy way or easy button for them to be able to do that?
Yeah, the easy button. And I think that experiences has been a big thing. Like, oh, we'll take you on a tour of the city, or we'll
Mhm,
take you on this other thing. But if you look at the analog of hotels and how
mhm,
hotels make money, hotels make about 30% of their enterprise, big hotels, 30% of their overall revenue on upsells and
mm,
amenities. So they're making a large chunk of their money on food and bev, on wellness, on on-site sales, right? And short-term rental being this more nascent industry has never been able to automate that very well. Um, but hotels, they generally are not selling you off-site experiences. And
mm,
off-site experiences don't, at least on our platform, they don't sell very well. They do sell a little bit,
right,
but the likelihood that the hierarchy of needs is I'm hungover and I want to lay checkout.
right, right.
Top of the it's not the top of the pile, and experiences at the bottom. So I think what we're doing that's a little different is you're going to see a lot of companies that are saying bungee jumping, bus to the Grand Canyon, right?
Mm.
And we're saying what are all the things that a short-term rental is missing that a hotel can do?
I
Yeah,
I love that, and again, it just creates that better opportunity for that win-win-win for everybody, really, even the
yeah,
the people that are providing that. And I think it's things that you already know that they're probably going to need because you get the question over and over again. It's
yeah,
just being able to kind of, it sounds like marry that data as well too, being able to kind of know these are what hotels do to be successful. Why not bring it to those short-term rentals so that they don't have to do necessarily do anything or too much additional to be able to
yeah.
provide that level of care for the people that are visiting.
Yes, for sure.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Would you consider that to be like part of your secret sauce? It could be for yourself, the business, or a combination of both. But is it that ability to kind of see that and understand that, see the forest for the trees, and be able to, of course, execute on that and bring that to life?
I would say a lot of it is the execution, and here is why too, is that so the majority of short-term rental hosts in the US and globally is female.
Mhm.
The fastest growing demographic is women over 60
Wow.
in the short, and that's globally. So it's a much more female focused, it's older focused, and
Mhm.
73% of our online community, we have about 20,000 hosts in our Instagram channel, Instagram community.
Mhm.
73% is female. So it's definitely skewed towards that. It's skewed older. Um, our foundation has been we have to make this really easy, which isn't to say that that group of people doesn't want to do some things that are difficult, but we need to create something that automates this, but we need to make it as easy as eBay. We need
Mhm.
to make it something that if your guest texts you at midnight on Friday night when you're out at the bar with your spouse, that you can text them back an exact link to that late checkout and they're done, or WhatsApp, because our intention is larger, getting outside of the US, having tourism in developing nations providing this because it brings in a lot of revenue, right? But
Right.
making it something that there's no downloads, your guest doesn't download anything. It's just very easy to understand because you already are using similar retail systems. So I think other people have tried doing things like this, or certainly people are doing it manually already. Hey, if you want something, leave $2 on the counter and then I'll get you something. And there's just a lot of back and forth. But
Right.
making it not only automated, but just making it very easy to understand and start is a big part of our. I want to see secret sauce sounds like so big, like part of our thing. Yeah.
Your thing. Okay, we could do that. I love that. But well, that thing is a huge thing, and the reason is because I always feel like a really big sign of like being able to kind of do something of scale and be able to make an impact, but also be able to have people adopt that is to simplify, no matter what age or whatever. Like you mentioned, I think when we realize that this is as easy as me doing anything else, that's when you start to say, okay, I'm going to adopt this and I'm going to use
Yeah.
this on a regular basis. So I commend you and the team to be able to, like, of course, be able to see that, understand that people might be doing it, but they may not be doing it to that level of, I guess, there's no static to make that happen. It's just very seamless and easy so that the guests, the hosts, and everybody in
Yeah.
between are able to kind of execute.
Yes. And do it the same day. Be up and running in the same day that you start it. I think for any adoption of a new product like ours, what you're going to do, and I do this all the time, is I'm like, oh, I really want to learn how to do this thing. Oh, and then it's going to be like number 5 on my list, number 7 on my list. But when I get some time, and
Yeah.
especially when you're talking about property managers, it's not just, oh, I got to put out this fire. It's I literally have to put out a fire. Like you got 10
Right.
people in 10 places. So it
Right.
has to be something that is like, I'm going to sit down once, I'm going to do it, and I'm live. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And again, I think it just shows a lot of foresight by being able to kind of think about those things. If I go to an Airbnb and they're thinking about all these things because they have the Gatorades or they have whatever it is that, it would be part of that experience for me of what I'm trying to do, then at the end of the day, I feel like that's just going to be closer to, the 5, 10, 11, whatever stars there might be on
Yeah.
whatever platform.
Exactly. Yeah.
Nice. Well, I absolutely love that. So I wanted to switch gears a little bit, and I want to ask you for what I call a CEO hack. So this could be like an Apple book or even a habit that you have, but what's something that makes you more effective and efficient?
So I just read this book called 4,000 Weeks,
Hmm.
and it's productivity for mortals.
Mm.
And it really changed. I mean, I've read like every product. I'm like the Pomodoro method, this method, that method.
Yes.
Um, this book, the premise of it and what it's saying is that if you live 80 years, 80 years is 4,000 weeks.
Mm.
Only 4,000 weeks, right?
Wow.
And if you're halfway there, like, what? 2,000? Like, that's crazy, right?
You're right, right, right.
And it's just taking a different view of productivity and deep thinking. It's the former productivity writer for Times of London or New York Times, but it
Hmm.
just gave me a different perspective on deep thinking and
Hmm.
energy management. And
Hmm.
it's made me more productive in a different way of I'm going to sit down and do this thing, but I might just be doing something because I enjoy it. Right.
Hmm.
I would say, more than anything, and including with this book, it's your energy management and knowing your zones as well. Like thinking you can sit down and be productive for 8 hours or 12 hours. I mean, I can grind for 12 hours, but I know at this point that I'm going to be effective at this time. And at this time, I am not going to be very effective. It's going to be really frustrating. And I'm not going to be in the best place for decision making. Right. So knowing your peaks and valleys and energy management being the most important part of all of it, um, is the thing. And what are your zones of excellence during the day? I know the 2 hours of my day that I'm going to be really good.
Right.
And I try to not have meetings during those times so I can get deep thinking done and not be distracted. That's a big part of it is like not thinking that you're superhuman, but knowing you're superhuman 2 hours a day. Right.
Right. Yeah, that ends up being one of the most powerful, or the most powerful knowledge is knowledge of self, and to be able to kind of understand that. But I love like it kind of gave me made me vibes of the 7 habits of highly effective people. One of them is begin with the end in mind. So
Yeah.
as we're trying to be productive and efficient and all these things, understanding that there is X amount of weeks left, I think starts to make it a lot more tangible, I guess you can say, where you're saying,
Yeah.
okay, if this is who I am, this is my superpower, my zone of genius, whatever that might be, let me protect this and make sure that I harness this so I can be as more impactful as I can be, so that these 2000 weeks or whatever it might be that's left is a lot more um rememberable, I guess you say.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think part of that also is giving yourself some grace for the hour that you know you're not going to be good. Sure, do
Mm,
whatever. If you want to look at TikTok or you want to eat chips and walk around, I mean, you want to do things that are going to be healthy for your brain, but don't try in those times because it actually makes the other times harder. Right.
yeah, absolutely. Like you mentioned, like I think so many times we forget that if we grind for 12 hours, that 12 hours has to be you have to be filled back up at some point, and
Yeah.
that could be more as destructive as we think it is being efficient.
Yeah.
Awesome. I love that. So, what would you consider to be a little bit more of what I could call a CEO nugget? This could be a word of wisdom or piece of advice. I like to say it might be something you would tell a potential host, or if you were to hop into a time machine, you might tell your younger business self.
Um, a really great nugget of wisdom that I got from a very big, billion-dollar CEO was you're going to get really burned out on your product and you are constantly going to be thinking of new ideas for new businesses and want to leave and do those new like, oh, I've got the best idea. And now, I've been doing this for long enough that I understand the model and how to replicate it. So I'm like, oh, we got to do this. We got to do this. And that is the time when you should go and listen to your users. Like in this last week, I took over our demos
Mhm.
because I have become so far away from the way that people use our product, and also hearing the value that they are getting from our product. And I've just been
Mhm.
so far from that. I'm like, oh, the grind, man. Like,
Yeah.
I have all these new ideas and these seem so sparkly, these fun ideas, but even last week, I was like, this is amazing. I had someone on a demo, and I maybe wouldn't know this, who is using our product to offer or to encourage their guests to tip their cleaning people, which again, that could be contentious. I don't do it in my rentals, but he said my cleaner's really happier because I have an 8-bedroom house, which is usually like 2 families, right? Nobody carries cash anymore. Right before they check out, I send them an automated message that says, hey, thank you so much for staying. If you'd like to tip the cleaner, here you go. The cleaner is way happier. This same guy said, oh, and we also we have a donate in our store. We have a donation to a local foster center. We're on an island in
Mm.
Texas. We have a donation button too. I was like, I'd never even thought of that using the host code for
Right.
either of those things. That's great that you're doing that. Right.
Yeah, that's really powerful because I think so many times I always say we forget about the human part of business and the human part of
Yeah.
life at that. And I think, of course, we want to make sure we're creating the best widget, product, service, whatever it is. And we sometimes can forget about those really great experiences, those human experience, how you're making someone's life better, which is ultimately why we started the things that we
Yeah.
do. But sometimes, when we're trying to do all the things, it seems like we can lose sight of that. So I love the practicality of that because sometimes it brings us back center and brings it back to our why and our purpose, it sounds like too.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So now I want to ask you my absolute favorite question, which is the definition of what it means to be a CEO. And our goal is to have different quote unquote CEOs on the show. So Annie, what does being a CEO mean to you?
This is another thing that I was told a long time ago. Bottom line with being a CEO is don't run out of money.
Mm.
I wish that it was more than that. I mean, there's strategy, but the money is the energy. And if you're getting that from the revenue, if you are making the decisions that are spurring the revenue, if you're making the decisions that are spurring the investment, that if you have no other job, that is your job, is keeping the company alive. And the thing that keeps it alive is money, right? If the money is just coming from sales, whatever it is. And I keep coming back to that whenever I'm like, oh, I got so many things that need to work on. I'm like, well, the most important thing is don't run out of money.
Right. Yeah, there's a phrase of keeping the main thing, the main thing. And I think when
Yes.
you start to realize that, it starts to help you to prioritize things. But I even think it goes along lines of what we talked about with the CEO hack as well too. Understanding that's 4,000 hours, 4,000 weeks, and realizing that again, like our business, what we're trying to do, what we're trying to accomplish, we need the gas to be able to continue
Yeah.
to fuel the things that we're hoping to do.
Yeah. Yeah. If there's no money, there's no business. And I mean, when you get to be at a different place at a very profitable, huge company, that changes a little. But even at that company, you can dip under profit pretty fast.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I feel like we have all these narratives around like these CEOs and they're so genius, but their job first and foremost is don't run out of money.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a really great, perspective and impactful definition because again, we can look at all the shiny things and say, okay, we're going to create this product service and all those things, but making sure that it's staying true to us being able to have the fuel to be able to impact the people that we want to impact is something that we sometimes forget about.
Yeah, I another thing that I a mantra that I repeat all the time is you have to do well to do good. You can
Mhm.
start out with impact and say we really, and for us that means, the woman in a developing nation tourism country who can now sell her grandkids handicrafts and breakfast and a parking spot, even though she doesn't speak the language of her guest and doesn't even carry the same currency, right? That's the ultimate goal for us. But in order to get there, we have to do well in the US. We have to grow enough that we can have our dev team do multiple currency, that we can have support teams in other countries, right? So do well. And I feel like if you're pitching as well, especially to investors, you got to show them how you're going to do well in order to do good, because it doesn't really work. Maybe it doesn't usually work the other way around, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate you so much in sharing that because it kind of goes back to the analogy of like when you hop on an airplane, they tell you to put your oxygen mask on first.
Yeah.
That's doing well so that you can do good to impact and help other people. But
Yeah.
so many times we want to help out everybody else and we don't have our oxygen mask on first and we're not able to impact other people, let alone ourselves. And that ends up being like the downfall of, I imagine, a lot of organizations.
Yeah. Agreed.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, Annie, truly appreciate that definition. Of course, I appreciate your time even more. So, what I want to do now is pass you the mic, so to speak, just see if there's anything additional that you can let our readers and listeners know, and of course, how best people can get hold of you, find out about all the awesome things you and your team are working on.
Yeah. So you can always find us at www.thehost.co. Um, if you know, almost everyone knows someone who is a short-term rental host, is what
Mhm.
I have also learned. If they are not, their aunt is, or their cousin's best friend is, please do share the host co, because it's a big revenue driver as well. We have people who are making, I think right now we're paying out one of our top property managers over $10,000 a month in
Wow.
amenities. Yeah. So it's a great revenue driver, but it also is bringing more money into that local economy that it might not have been able to stretch that far. So join us, and you can also sign up. You can get started, but it's always best join a demo for half an hour, and you'll just know how to use it. Yeah. And you also, once you join a demo, you get a first month free of Pro. Our product is actually free to use forever, which is a big part of what we do as well. We take a
Okay.
7% commission on your sales. But then we have, a subscription tiers from that. So
Okay.
www.thehost.co and Instagram at the host company.
Okay. Perfect. 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 We'll have the links and information in the show notes as well too. One other quick question, Annie: is it anyone in the U.S. or anyone across the globe that can sign up as a host?
Yeah, anyone across the globe can sign up right now. I just came back from a 2-week trip in Europe where I've met with several of our users. We're only operating in US dollars right now, but
Okay.
by the middle of the year, this year being 2024, we should have multiple currency going. So it will be a little easier. But, we have people who are running retreat centers in Italy using it to book, massages and fresh flowers, etc. So it's somewhat global, I would say, at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. But wait, there's more. So there's more opportunity, more things that you all are doing, which makes it so awesome that you've been able to kind of do that. And of course, like I mentioned, we'll have the links and information in the show notes so that everybody can follow up with you, sign up, do all the things. But truly appreciate you taking some time out to be on the show. One of the things that I always appreciate is sometimes we're looking for that new opportunity, that new thing. Sometimes it's right in front of our face. We just have to think differently on how we're trying to execute that. So thank you so much for thinking differently and obviously executing as well too, and truly appreciate you. And I hope you have a phenomenal rest of the day.
Thank you. This has been so fun.